Oh, hi there. I meant to make this video sooner, but I got caught up in other projects. Anyway, the Connor McDavid contract, $100 million bucks. He's just coming off a 100-point season. It's for 8 years, so he'll be 28-ish when this contract expires. And Sidney Crosby will be in his late 30s, so it is accurate to say that Connor McDavid could be the next Sidney Crosby. However, there are certain things that need to be taken into consideration. One of them being, I saw the interview, or one of the interviews with Connor McDavid, having the discussion about his contract, and it mostly sounded like it was his agents doing the talking. And of course they want to rake in as much money as possible, and him being a young guy, obviously if someone says, well, do you want to make 50 million or do you want to make 100 million, you're going to say, yeah, I want to make 100 million. But he probably doesn't know this, but there will be stipulations to go with that $100 million. No agency, sports league, anything like that hands out that kind of money and expects nothing in return. So people are going, well, he's got to bring back a Stanley Cup, he's got to have a few successful years, and he's really good, they're confident in him, and this is the reason he's getting this big contract. Well, they said the same thing about Alex Ovechkin. He signed the first contract ever that was over 100 million. It was 124 million. And he had a lot of good seasons. Last year was not particularly good. He got less than 70 points. It's not a bad season, but for a 124 million contract, it's not that good. And the Capitals will have a contract on him until he's in his late 30s and past his prime as well. And I bring this up because Alex Ovechkin, great guy, entertaining to watch. In different circumstances, he may have held up the cup, but he's got that look in his face like he knows his best years are already behind him. In particular, the stone in his way, which is Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins, they always thwart him. And the problem is, when you're making over $100 million and you don't bring back the cheddar, people are going to be mad at you. That's a fact. And Alex Ovechkin looks like he's in hot water. Time's running out. I mean, he's only 31, going to be 32 later this year. But even so, he's still, he's not lived up to what he was supposed to have done. And he's probably owned by a Russian billionaire who has a totally different concept of what he was expecting out of Alex Ovechkin. It's not necessarily his fault that they always lose to the Pittsburgh Penguins, but the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, that is what has happened. And Connor McDavid, it doesn't look like at this point in time that he has any significant competition. I mean, Sidney Crosby at the time being is his competition, but I mean a couple of years down the road, Crosby will be getting older and less of a threat to Connor McDavid, and nobody else is in like a Connor McDavid type position. First round pick this year, he's not a Connor McDavid. The first round picks, first overall picks in the last few years, they're not Connor McDavid's. So he's got a lot of pressure on him, and a lot can happen, and it's for certain that anything could happen. I mean, as far as his health goes, he should be fine. Like if he signed a $100 million contract, they did every medical test on him possible. Like, he's probably had a colonoscopy, every kind of blood test, ultrasounds, physical endurance test, every single test you can think of, they made him do. Most of those tests you don't even need to have done until you're like you're like in your 60s or something, but they'll make him do it because he's getting paid $100 million for 8 years. I want to make sure there's no hidden surprises. And it's not likely that he's going to suffer a significant injury, because $100 million players don't get hit like other players do. So in that, there's an advantage. But as I said, if he does not bring back the cheddar, he's going to be in big trouble. Even if he does have, as a player, successful seasons. Like if he has several 100-point seasons, that's all good and well. If he wins a couple trophies doing that, that counts for something. But if he doesn't bring back the Stanley Cup, then he's in trouble. And he may not, and probably does not, understand that. He's probably a young guy. He's got the world's his oyster, and he's got a really bright future. And that's probably what the sycophants around him, his cult of personality, wants him to think. They don't want him to have morbid thoughts like, well, what if I lose? What if I never win a Stanley Cup? They don't want him to know that. Obviously, they want him to win, and they care about his well-being. But that's while he's making them money. He's making the agents money. He's making the Edmonton Oilers money because he's bringing in more fan revenue and other factors as well. But in business, especially with that kind of business, with that kind of money, people turn on you when things don't go their way. If they start losing money because of you, then you're in deep shit. And he probably doesn't fully understand that. I mean, he's only 20 years old. If I was in a similar situation as him when I was 20 years old, I wouldn't even have thought of that. And they probably don't want him thinking that. They probably, talk to him in a particular manner all the time. And he's a young guy. He probably just can't see them for who they are. Some of them, will, diehard fan will be with him till the end. But there'll be others in his immediate circle, and it's about the money. He doesn't bring back the money, he's in big trouble. And I'm not saying like it's like in the old days in the Soviet Union where if a player messed up, they're going to hell when they go back to Russia. But, you think, well, after your career is done, or after the 8 years, 10 years, whatever your contract is, you didn't win a Stanley Cup, you just get to walk away like nothing happened. No, you'd be wrong. With that kind of money, people will go after you for years and years and years later. They'll never leave you alone. Which reminds me, he's probably got quite a few sycophantic girlfriends, which is unfortunately the curse of being successful, not bad looking, in a cool sport, probably nice guy. All those things, you immediately attract, insane women. They probably got it set up so that, he doesn't have any concrete girlfriends. They're probably not too weird around him. But there most certainly are creepy women that are interested in him. And that's, why does it have to be in society? I don't know. Anyway, that aside, you may be wondering why I'm wearing an Anaheim Ducks jersey when I have an Edmonton Oilers jersey and I'm talking about Connor McDavid. Well, the thing is, Anaheim's the team that thwarted Connor McDavid this year. Supposing the Anaheim Ducks are the equivalent of the Pittsburgh Penguins to Alex Ovechkin, the Anaheim Ducks will be to the Edmonton Oilers. Supposing the Anaheim Ducks are always thwarting the Oilers and Connor McDavid never wins a Stanley Cup. It's entirely possible. It's my personal belief that he is going to win one because his cult of personality is starting to develop. there is no real competition against him at this point. I mean, in the long run, there's nobody his age. Like, Sidney Crosby's, what, 8, 9 years older than him? So, I mean, Crosby will be a significant player for a few more years, yes, but when he's 36, Connor McDavid will be in his prime at like 28. So, at this point, Connor McDavid should be alright, and he has asked for a lot of money, so we don't know how the rest of the Edmonton team is, how they're going to be able to form the rest of the team around him, because there have been a lot of good hockey players who've played for teams, and the teams around this, really great hockey player were crap. For whatever reason, the most notable mention in that regard for me would be Rick Nash when he was on Columbus. Rick Nash was a really good hockey player, but his team sucked. It was terrible. And I don't know, the Edmonton Oilers were good this year, but will they be able to keep it up? Because whereas Chicago Blackhawks won the Stanley Cup 3 times, they had thorns in their side too, namely Detroit, and they were able to overcome them, and now they're a better team than Detroit. But although Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews, Marian Hossa, who's probably going to retire due to that skin condition, if whatever, I don't even know if that's true or not, whatever, if he doesn't play anymore, they all made a significant chunk of money, but they weren't like making Connor McDavid money. Like Patrick Kane doesn't look as good a hockey player as Connor McDavid at this point in time. I mean, that goal he had against Philadelphia in 2010, very impressive, very cool. Definitely some noteworthy of the history books, but we don't I don't see him ever getting recognized like Sidney Crosby. And Connor McDavid may fall into that same category, as he may never get to be as recognized as Sidney Crosby. Because let's remember, when Sidney Crosby first entered the league, everyone said how great he was. They perpetuated the image of his cult of personality, and they said he's this, that, and the other, like no other player ever before. Yeah, like John Toews, they went good hockey player, he's on a good team, but he never had the same cult of personality as Sidney Crosby. There was never everyone saying, the golden goal by the golden boy. It was, like, there's a fiddle going on. What this really is, it's a debate between Wayne Gretzky's prodigy and Mario Lemieux's prodigy. And to be perfectly frank with you, I prefer Wayne Gretzky to Mario Lemieux. Mario Lemieux beat up on a lot of weak teams back in the day, got an absurd amount of points that he would never have been able to achieve in this league day and age. If he were playing right now in his prime, he'd be maybe 45 goal scorer. 200 points? No, he's not getting it. Not against competent defensemen. And as I told in other videos, YouTube his top highlight goals. There's about 30, 35 of them on YouTube, and they're not goals that any other player couldn't have scored. I'm not saying they're as terrible as Gordie Howe goals, but they're not a whole lot better, to be honest with you. That's just the reality. Defensemen, goalies, they've gotten a lot better and a lot more competent over the years. But anyway, Connor McDavid, he can score goals, but he looks like an assist guy, because he got 70 assists this year, and I already explained why I don't think assists are as important, unless it's like a significant assist, because people, they get a point for touching a puck, and they didn't really make the play happen, and they didn't put it in the back of the net, so they got the point, just by touching the puck, really. And to me, that's bogus. I think it should be a play-by-play decision whether someone deserves a point or not. not because they're the third person to touch it before an opposing team before it went in the net. I don't think that's a good enough reason. I really hope Anaheim doesn't cause future problems for Connor McDavid, but we won't know that until it happens. Connor McDavid doesn't know that's going to happen. The NHL League doesn't know that's going to happen. Nobody knows. It's all just a mixed mash of personalities running around the league, and not just hockey players on the ice, but also businessmen and corporate NHL officiates who are behind the scenes controlling things. So there's a lot going on there, and it's all money in the bank. People will profit if Connor McDavid fails. That's the other thing. If he fails, there will be people who make money. Not the people who put money into him, but there'll be other parties that'll make money. And I'm hoping that his agents and the Edmonton Oilers organization is going to take that into consideration. They've got to take a lot of things into consideration, but at the end of the day, it's still a capitalist system and they want their money. People go, oh, Connor McDavid, he's made for life, he's got no worries, nothing like that. Not true. I feel bad for him in some ways because he's got too much money, too young, and that has always been bad news. You do not want a huge contract like that. He probably don't know, or if he does, he has a vague notion of it. His agents aren't going to tell him straight up, like, look, you screw up, you don't win a Stanley Cup, these guys are going to, be after your blood. There's more than one way to get back at someone for screwing you over. Not Connor McDavid would screw them over, but, he wouldn't get what they wanted them to hit. He wouldn't get what they wanted out of him, necessarily, to make him mad, if you understand what I'm saying here. So many ways. And it may seem like harmless ways too, but supposing they trap him in a situation where he's got to go with one of those sycophant girlfriends of his. Ew. Guy his age shouldn't even think about that kind of stuff. Anyway, I hope that doesn't happen. I hope he's successful and, he ends up being where he wants to be. Because if Sidney Crosby's where he wants to be with his Jew money, then, push him aside and let the new kid get up there and win a couple Stanley Cups and have a successful career. Crosby, being a greedy Jew, obviously wants more. And I can see him for what he is. I mean, he may be black Irish, but he's a Jew underneath. Anyway, that was basically what I wanted to say. I hope Connor McDavid does well. They're paying him enough money, but things could go bad, and we may not necessarily hear about how these things go bad, and it may not be just him getting to the Stanley Cup final and not winning the Stanley Cup. That would be the simplistic, stupid version of things not going his way. Lots of behind-the-scene things going on that could cause him problems in the future, or could cause him great success in the future. So, we'll just see. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good one.